Hello, namaskaram, namaskar. My name is Pooja Dwivedi. Welcome to my class. Today we are going to discuss the plight of Kashmiri Pandits. This is important for us to know from the perspective of GS Mains paper first and second, and why we are discussing it, we will get to that as well. Before I begin, I would like to inform you that StudyIQ is launching its 3 batches of P2Y, that is Prelims 2, Mains 2, Interview, from 11th of August, and these will be morning batches from 8 a.m. onwards. You will get everything at one place, from Prelims test series, Mains test series, and even a Mains residential program for those students who are going to qualify Prelims 2024. You will be called to the StudyIQ campus to prepare for the Mains examination. This is the Mains residential program. After that, we have our interviews as well. The classes will start from 11th of August. These will be live in nature. That means you will be able to interact with the teachers. Other than this, just use the code PDLive to get this course at from 70,000 to just at 29,999. Do not worry about the notes. The notes that I provide for my YouTube classes will be available on Pooja Dwivedi UPSC. If you have any queries or doubts regarding this examination, you can also contact me on my Instagram. Now, these are the many things that we have to discuss today, step by step. Be ready for the truth that is. See, what is the news? First, we have to talk about the news, of course. Recently, the Jammu and Kashmir police has revived the case of Justice Ganjoo's murder. He was murdered by Kashmiri militants in broad daylight. And still, we are not even close to finding out what happened. But recently, the Jammu and Kashmir police has tried to resuscitate the case. Maybe justice will prevail. Let's hope for the best. Moving on. Who are Kashmiri Pandits? We have to know about that as well. Kashmiri Pandits, or the Pandits of Kashmir, are natives of Kashmir, and they are the highest rank Brahmins in the Hindu hierarchy. This is how we put them. But more so, they are linguistically and culturally very different from the Brahmins of the other areas of India. They actually used to reside to the western region of the subterranean Saraswati. This is the Saraswati river, the subterranean river, and the Pandits who used to reside at the western area, they were known as Saraswat Brahmins, or the worshippers or devotees of the Saraswati. So Kashmiri Pandits are Saraswat Brahmins. Although we can say that Pandits in Sanskrit, it means a learned man. The meaning is very different from what we see in the Hindu hierarchical society. They are known for their scholastic achievement, great scholars. That is why Kashmiri Pandits, they generally want to be known as Bhat or Bhatt. Okay, Bhat or Bhatt. Bhat or Bhatt. Now that means in Prakrit, a great scholar, and they are the natives of Kashmir. Not only that, we just know them for their plight, right? Many people may not know about this. They shared the aspirations of the Indians, the rest of the population of India, against the British. Now, how do we know that? The first ever conference of the Indian States People convened in 1927 was chaired by the firebrand Kashmiri Pandit Shankar Lal Kaul. Then Pandit Dinanath Kachru later on became the Secretary General of the conference, very close friend of Jawaharlal Nehru. He also went to jail along with Pandit Nehru during the Quit India movement. And basically, their outlook was towards the integration of India, Kashmir to be integrated with India. Their presence in the Kashmir Valley was a manifestation of the secular and tolerant culture that was in Kashmir. The Kashmir's culture was very different from the rest of India. We wouldn't say that the Kashmiri Pandits and the Kashmiri Muslims were brothers in arms, but there was a sense of tolerance, there was a sense of cohabitation that existed. This is not what I am saying. This is what the Pandits who have lived there have said. Also, they actually created the struggle against the Dogra rule into a non-sectarian mass movement. This is how they made the entire India to see it. It wasn't a sectarian movement. It was a non-sectarian movement, and this was led by the Kashmiri Pandits as well. Not only that, in 1938, Pandits and Muslims, they jointly issued a declaration of national demand, which later became the basis of the movement of self-government in the state. Because back then, it was of course believed through the instrument of accession that was later on signed that Kashmir is a region which is very complex. As the country got partitioned on the basis of religion, that is why it was a sensitive matter. The Maharaja was of Hindu character and the population majority of them were Muslims. But Kashmiris, because they were so educated, Kashmiri Pandits, they were so educated that their sense of society was very tolerant and secular. The Kashmiri Muslims also used to live before the actual divisive policies of the British. They crept into that area. Before that also, of course, we have heard about, we have known about so much, so many instances of prosecution of Kashmiri Pandits. Still, there was a sense of tolerance. So as a society, it was very different from the rest of India. And because of the same manner, because of the similar structure that they were fearful of, they wanted to remain a little independent for a while. And Pakistan wasn't happy with that, because when it was suggested that Kashmir finally may become a part of India, because the narrative in Kashmir, actually a plebiscite had to be conducted, the narrative in Kashmir was so strong, was so pro-Indian, that it was definitely a promise by the Kashmiris that yes, we will become a part of India. But the Pakistani government wasn't happy with it. The Pakistan wanted to ensure that it doesn't become a part of India. So what happens is, through the Pashtun tribes, the Pakistanis infiltrated into Kashmir. At the backdrop of that, instrument of accession was signed between Maharaja of Kashmir, Maharaja Hari Singh, and India, that in exchange of defense, Kashmir belongs to India. That means if Kashmir is defended by Indian forces, there can be a status that will be reached at a later phase, that it will be integrated into India. That was what was signed. And this changed the entire history. The Pashtun tribes, the Pakistani infiltrated, and a war was there because of this. And of course, we all know how Pandit Nehru took that to the United Nations, and then it was created as a dispute between these two countries. However, it shouldn't have been a dispute while instrument of accession was signed between it. And Pandit Nehru was very upset after that. It is said that, after so many years, he still had this pain in his heart, which he took with himself to the grave. So this is what the history of Kashmir is. So the secular nature of Kashmir was manifested by the Kashmiri Pandits and Kashmiri Muslims living together. Moving on. Now, let's talk about Justice Ganjoo, whose case is being resuscitated. Who is Justice Ganjoo? Who was Justice Ganjoo? He was a district and sessions court judge, a Kashmiri Pandit, and he had actually awarded the death penalty to JKLF founder Maqbool Bhat, who was charged with murder of the police Amar Chand in 1966. So, when he did that, it went to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court upheld that decision, and Maqbool Bhat was hanged in 1984. Now, Justice Ganjoo was shot as a revenge. It was in broad daylight in Srinagar in 1989. Not only him, but other important Kashmiri Pandits were shot dead by Islamist militants, such as Tika Lal Taplu. He was a senior vice president of the BJP, a very prominent face in Kashmir. He was loved by Hindus and Muslims equally. Also, he was shot dead on September 14, 1989. He was an advocate who was born in Srinagar's Habba Kadal area, and when he was going to the High Court, he was shot dead. Now, the thing is that it wasn't like he wasn't given any choice of leaving, because the character back then by the militants had to be established that Kashmir belongs to only the Muslims and more so to Pakistan. And he was given a chance to leave. It was by his son's, you can say, evidence. Qazi Nisar, he was chairing the Muslim United Front back then. He sent a box of toffees or sweets and said that a letter was there. In view of his popularity among Muslims as well, he was being given a final opportunity to leave the valley. Now, Tika Lal Taplu, he took his children and his wife to Delhi, left them there. His son said, please do not go back to Kashmir. Then Tika Lal Taplu said, no, It's a battle of ideology that he has been fighting since a very long time. He survived in 1986, he will survive now as well. When he returned to Kashmir, he was shot dead. Not only that, but Lasta Kaul was also dead. He was shot dead. He was the director of Srinagar Doordarshan. He was shot dead for pro-India shows that were used to conducted on Doordarshan. And many people say his entire movement was actually given to the militants by a very near and dear of him. So this is just a sad reality that we are living in. P.N. Bhatt, he was an advocate, a philanthropist and a writer. On December 27, 1990, after most of the Pandits, after the majority of the genocide and the exodus took place from Kashmir, near his ancestral home at Kaur Bazar, he was greeted by a person who was wearing a firan, and this person proceeded to then pull out a gun and shot him under the chin. Why was all this done? Send a message to the Kashmiri Pandits, the Hindus, the Sikhs, that Kashmir does not belong to them. They were also given 3 choices. Yes, the 3 choices. I am not saying this. You may be thinking, how am I saying this? I am saying this from a book which has been written by a colonel who has served in Kashmir. Okay, so on Jan 4th, 1990, a local Urdu newspaper, Aftab, it published a press release which was issued by Hizbul Mujahideen. All Pandits were asked to leave the valley immediately. Al-Safa, another local newspaper, said these warnings were followed by Kalashnikov wielding masses jihadis carrying out military type marches, which was done openly. The government, the central government, was sleeping. All the time this government was sleeping. This government which left the Kashmiri Pandits at their own fate. Then reports of killing of Kashmiri Pandits continued to pour in. Bomb explosions, sporadic firing by militants became a daily occurrence. It was like a norm. Just imagine the situation. We have also visualized this situation through a movie. And this is all, whatever has been shown in the movie is exactly, if you read the Indian Defense Review, through the book of Colonel Tiku, we can find lots of similarities. And it was a norm. This was the entire mistake lies with the government which had promised to take care of all the members of this particular country failed to do so. And I'm not talking about just after 1947. It was after like 3 decades almost. The government failed the Kashmiri Pandits. And it's like nobody used to talk about it. It was unspeakable as if. Then they were presented with 3 choices. These 3 choices are relieve, salive ya gali. Convert to Islam, leave the place or perish. That means or die. And there were slogans which were, shouted frequently. Death to Kafir, death to Indians. This was all done by the Pakistani Islami militants who wanted the entire Kashmir for themselves, who wanted to snap the psychological cord that existed between the Indians and the Kashmir. And that was through Kashmiri Pandits. So they wanted to actually harm the Kashmiri Pandits for many reasons. We will get to that as well. Now, let's talk about the build-up. From 1980 to 1990, what has happened? See, Sheikh Abdullah, Kashmir was in ferment. It was in turmoil. Sheikh Abdullah had died in 1982. The party's leading chair went to his son, Farooq Abdullah. He also won the 1983 election. But later on, the centre broke up the National Conference, the party that was led by Farooq Abdullah, and they reinstated the dissident Ghulam Muhammad Shah as the chief minister. At this moment only, at this particular period only, the JKLF stepped up its activities, and by 1986, when the Rajiv Gandhi government opened the doors of the Babri Masjid for the Hindus to prayer, the ripples were also felt in Kashmir. Many Hindu temples were also targeted, many Gurudwaras, Hindu temples. That means any structure that was non-Islamic, it was targeted. 1986, Farooq Abdullah again became the CM, and the 1989 capitulation of the JLKF in the kidnapping of Mufti Saeed's daughter, it set the stage for the next decade. So just imagine, there is a region where openly all this was being done, but the pusillanimity of the government, the central government, the perfidious central government did not even think about for a moment how it could intervene in this particular situation. Okay. Also, Tika Lal Taplu, Neelkanth Ganjoo, Justice Ganjoo, Premnath Bhat, they all were murdered during this period only. Also, let's talk about the night of January 1990, when mass exodus and genocide started to take place. The Farooq Abdullah government had been dismissed and governor's rule was imposed. The Kashmiri Pandit community decided to leave. And many say that they left because of their own choice. They were not, they were not threatened at all. They left because of their own choice. Now, January 20, larger wave left in March and April. This was the first wave, but the larger wave left in March and April after more Pandits were killed. January 21, the CRPF gunned down 160 Kashmiri Muslim protesters at the Gavkadar Bridge. And when this happened, both the cases happened so much, it looked like it was happening simultaneously. Just like the situation of Manipur, you can say. Just like the situation of Manipur that exists right now, and the government completely failed to check it. It was happening in Kashmir back then. But Kashmir was a much larger issue because there was an issue between two countries through Pakistan. And when that should have happened, like the government, it is the duty of the government. The current government has failed the Manipur people. And successive governments have also failed Jammu and Kashmir and Manipur. So it is just like that. It is the duty of each and every government to take steps when such anarchy takes place. And when the government fails, we as a country fail. We as a country do fail. Because these are our representatives. The government is our representative, right? They're representing us. We are an elected democracy. So, similarly, Kashmir and Manipur, we are seeing so many similarities. However, Jammu and Kashmir was a much bigger issue, as in because it was between two countries, Pakistan and India. This Manipur issue could have been handled if the government woke up earlier. If the government woke up earlier, all these many matters could have been taken care of. So it is we always have to check the government. And correctly so, the parliament is trying to check the government. However, the parliament continues to battle in checking the government. Right now, we need a good, better opposition. Better opposition means we need much stronger opposition so that they can, put the government in their place. Those whoever are in the power, they are very prone to abuse powers if they are in this country for more than 10 years. So, in order to ensure that there is no dictatorship, this should take place. Much stronger opposition is needed and much accountable government is needed. Until and unless there is no accountability, the government will continue to abuse their powers. Okay, moving on. Now, as of a data, 75,343 Kashmiri Pandit families were there in 1990 and more than 70,000 fled between 1990 and 1992. And the flight also continued till 2000. So still we saw recently only a fresh wave of migration also took place when targeted killings were occurring in Kashmir. The KPSS has placed the number of Kashmiri Pandits killed by militants from 1990 to 2011 at 399. It is much higher. The majority during 1989 and 1990. Some 800 families have remained in the valley through these 3 decades. The plight of Kashmiris and now Manipur. Now, uprooting Pandits was one of the most important steps that the militants had to take. Why? Let's know about it. First, eviction of Kashmiri Pandits from the valley would end the much feared secularization of the Kashmiri Muslim society. Because Pakistan wanted to paint a picture that Kashmir is the land of Muslims, and as on the basis of religion only partition had been done, so now India wouldn't be able to keep Kashmir. So this would mean it would destroy India's image or credibility among the entire globe and of course among the Kashmiri Muslims as well. Kashmir devoid of Pandits would result in snapping the psychological bond that Kashmir had with the rest of the country. as the rest of the country. We never said, and still we say that it is a land for Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, Buddhists, Christian, all these sort of people can live together here because we are a secular country. If we would have become a theocratic country like Pakistan, we wouldn't have developed so much. Never stick to your religious beliefs so much that you are blindfolded by them. Your religious beliefs are good. It is okay to be religious, it is good to be spiritual. But if you just stick to that in every phase of your life, in education, in political sphere, in social sphere, you will never be able to develop yourself. This is what has happened with Pakistan. Sticking to one's own religion too much gives rise to communalism. And communalism is so negative. It has harmed our country. We have actually been the victim of communalism. So it is important for India to realize this is a land for all. We do not have to become like a country like Pakistan. That is why your religious beliefs should be your personal beliefs. They should not spill over to other areas. Okay. Then Kashmiris devoid of Pandits would, snap the psychological cord that India had with Kashmir. Okay. Because the rest of the India, according to Pakistan, was all Hindu. No Muslims are living there. No Christians are living there. It was like that. The Kashmiri Muslims would get to own all the movable and immovable property left behind by Kashmiri Pandits. These are narrow and micro goals that were sorted to achieve. Corner all the jobs which were vacated by the Pandits. Muslims would do that, Kashmiri Muslims. This was how they won the support of Kashmiri Muslims. If they will go, you will get that. And it is very easy to radicalize any area or any region or any person which is too much invested in their religion. And sole beneficiaries of huge doles given by the central government would be given to Kashmiri Muslims. The Kashmiris would get to own and control all the businesses and commercial activities. These were the narrow goals and short-term goals that had to be achieved. Now, what is their current status? What is their current status? We have to know. Because Kashmiri Pandits have become a minority in their own region and they have become a refugee in their own home. So 1990, mostly middle class community, when they poured out of Kashmir, when they were threatened and killed and whatnot to go out of Kashmir, they started living in shady areas. Most of them who could, not most of them, but some of them who could achieve to start from the scratch, they settled in Delhi, Pune, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, even Jaipur and Lucknow. Better ones, they were able to go abroad as well. Now a township of 2-room tenements called Jagti, it was built in Jammu. Other than this, government tenements in Purkhu on the outskirts of Jammu, in Nagrota and Muthi, they gave some solace, but who wouldn't want to return to their own homes? The properties were sold. The properties of Kashmiri Pandits who were living there, it was sold. How and who? How will they return and who will be responsible for their returns? Successive governments have failed, completely failed. But when Article 370 was scraped off, the biggest ones to cheer were the Kashmiri Pandits. Why? Because of the Article 370, the case which the Kashmiris used to follow, that they are a special status, they can have their own set of principles to govern. If it is democracy, then fine, not democracy, better. So this was actually how Article 370 was abused time and again. India did agree that Kashmir was a very different, culturally different area, but still it was an integral part of India. It is an integral part of India and it will remain an integral part of India. We have cultural connections. We have so many connections to go. If we go back to the ancient times, Kashmir is ours and it will remain ours. There is no fact to deny it. Other than this, the Article 370 is a step in the correct direction if it is not abused. If situation prevails, if situation is bettered, because the government can turn any region as a union territory if strategically it is important, if administratively it is important, any government can do it. But it should not be abused. And the current situation is better than the last ones. Now Kashmir has a graph. Sometimes it is better, sometimes it is worse. Why? Because of our neighbor Pakistan and now China as well. If continuously India is in tussle with its neighbor, if it does not have good relationship with Pakistan, it will spend more on Kashmir, on the Kashmiri, on the borders of Kashmir. Will try to ensure that more money or more economic availability is there for Kashmir, so that children, people there can have employment and economic opportunities. And when there is an economic opportunity, it becomes hard for them to be radicalized. If there are no economic opportunities, I can give like 100 rupees for just stone pelting and creating nuisance. This is the problem of Kashmir. And by abrogation of Article 370, it is possible for the government to make available economic opportunities, startups, businesses in Kashmir. This is the reason. Similarly, in other areas of India, Manipur, the problem with Manipur is that most of the developmental infrastructure was done in the regions which were plain, and the plains have been dominated by Meiteis. The hilly regions were not as developed. The cookies used to reside there. So we see that economic issue, representation issue, is the biggest issue that any country, such a diverse country like India has. So we have to think it from that perspective. Solution to all sorts of radicalization and extremism is economic in the current scenario. It is economic, it is educational. When the government will work on these two things, it will become hard for the extremist, any extremist, be it any extremist, they will never be able to radicalize any population like that. So I hope you understood this topic well. That's it. Thank you so much for watching.